All right, cool.
Hmm.
All right, it's my friend Anastasia René, who I haven't seen in forever in person. Thank
I
you.
don't remember when the last time was.
It feels like after a late night gig, and then we got some momos or something. Was that the one?
You may
I,
have to explain to folks what momos are.
oh, that's right. I got some momos a few weeks ago, I think, actually. In
Yeah, they don't deliver them over here.
they're so good. I mean, especially try to aim towards the vegetarian side. The potato ones are so good.
Hmm. Yes, I saw a place. I sent you that video where they have the ones that are stuffed with chives.
Oh, right, right.
I've got to try those.
Are those in Queens also?
Hmm.
Oh, cool.
Right in the same area,
Oh man, we
like
gotta.
right around the corner from the truck we usually go to.
Wow, definitely gotta go. I mean, it's also if you go there with a mask and you bring the food home, it's obviously safer.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So anyway, I'll start over just in case we want to use this video in the post-pandemic years, but it's all good.
Okay.
All right, I'm here with Anastasia, my good friend I haven't seen forever, and we're gonna talk about the blues. Gonna talk about Anna. Talk about music. Do you want to say anything? Maybe say a few words about yourself. And I know you haven't had incredible. Sorry, you have had an incredible career. A lot of great stories. You play with so many great musicians, and have traveled all over and sung your heart out in many places. And
Well, it's really kind of funny because even though I learned about the blues in college, I suddenly find myself a blues singer. I was always doing jazz and R&B, and now I guess it started with the Paris trip with Chris Bergson. They needed an African American woman to go over and sing the blues, and I was the only one Chris knew. So we went over 2 years ago and did two blues festivals that I headlined, and I literally had to like learn blues tunes for the festival.
maybe relearn. You probably knew them already.
Well, some of them I did. He made some suggestions, and there was a lot of Bobby Blue Bland that I wanted to get into.
Yeah,
So I learned that. I did my song, the one that you're familiar with.
yeah.
And after I got back, it was just blues, 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 blues.
You do one gig and it brings more of that the same gig, right?
Yeah, pretty much. That's why I'm listed as a reggae singer on allmusic.com and as a blues singer on Reverbnation.
When I'm shopping for a slide or an amp, I'll have to find you on Reverb. I always thought of that site as more equipment based.
Reverbnation?
Oh, Reverbnation. I'm thinking of Reverb.
No, 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 no. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it pretty much got heightened. Well, not really heightened. Now that I'm thinking of it, it started with Scott Sharrard because he pulled me into those gigs when Gregg Allman got sick.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he Greg had been booked for a run at City Winery in New York in 2016, and he got really ill and he couldn't do a single show. He had to go back home, and the decision was made the day before the first show that
Wow.
he was going to go home, and the club, of course, needed somebody to cover it. So Scott just brought in a bunch of his friends, including me, and we covered for Gregg Allman for 4 days.
That's super cool. I remember when that happened. Let's see. Where was that? Was that somewhere out of
It
town?
was City Winery downtown.
You said City Winery, right? Right.
Hmm.
How long ago
And
was
that was 2016.
that? I guess I'm getting confused. There was another. I thought there was another road trip too that you did in that same band. It's like another.
Well, we also we did an Almonds tribute, but we didn't really tour. We just went up to Kingston to do a couple of gigs, and we did a few in New York.
That feels like touring, right?
Hmm. Well, yeah, yeah, we did it at what is the name of Levon Helm's place?
uh,
Uh, I think it's just called the Barn.
okay.
Yeah, but it was a very cool hang.
That's a cool town, actually, Kingston.
Yeah, yeah.
So what do you feel when you sing the blues? I know that may be such a challenging question to answer like directly, or and it probably
Hmm.
moment to moment and from day to day.
hmm Well, I mean, the feeling that I get from singing the blues isn't that different from the feeling that I get from other songs where emotion is involved. It all comes pretty much from the same place, and all of the music pretty much comes from the same place, which is the blues. So it's you have more freedom to do a lot of things with it within the structure of the blues. Like I know there are some that are less structured, but I'm speaking more of like your basic 12 bar blues and that sort of thing. There's so much you can do with it. Um, there's it just seems more conducive to improvisation, not only with the way you sing it, but with what you sing.
All right.
And I know plenty of blues players who forget the lyrics and just make stuff up
Right.
right away. I've done that a couple of times. It's been interesting.
Right. And when you hear guitar, guitar players, all instrumentalists, I feel at least my heroes and people that I know like look up to singers. We want to, I want that's my voice, and that's I have this device, this machine to
Exactly.
and vice versa. Vocalists have studied Charlie Parker and Miles Davis and Lee Morgan. It just goes
hmm
back and forth that constant study. But what do you think of, or what do you hear or feel when you hear this?
Well, I feel like that's everything I missed on the many trips to Mississippi that I made with my family
Oh,
before I knew about the blues. I have a ton of family down in Mississippi, and when I was still going there every summer, I knew nothing about the blues, or I definitely would have done some investigation. I would have gone to some juke joints. I would have gone to maybe even the very crossroads. I think they actually know where they are, but I never knew about it, and I haven't been to Mississippi in well over 20 years.
yeah,
So, but I mean, that takes me right there. It brings up Robert Johnson, and it brings up Howlin' Wolf and Watermelon Slim, who a friend of mine plays with, and a lot of the players who are like right out of the Delta.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm. But guitar has always been my favorite instrument to be accompanied by. Sorry, piano players. Um, but there's just an openness to it that lets the guitar player do more and lets the vocalist do more
Right.
than there is with piano, unless you're like a really exceptional accompanist. And it's sometimes exceptional accompanists are hard to come by,
Yeah.
but the guitar is far and away my favorite instrument to sing with.
Oh, that's good to know. Well, you and I have done so many gigs together, including
hmm
touring Russia and playing Carnegie Hall and playing the UN together.
hmm
Yeah, guitar and voice do have a special relationship, just as guitar and drums do. And also with slide, it's like it reminds me of either a vocalist or a trombone player. You have that freedom.
hmm Definitely. Yeah, I was telling my students the other day that most instruments were made to, in some regard, mimic the human voice,
All right.
because the human voice, of course, was the first instrument, and then they began making manual instruments. Um, Possibly because some people couldn't sing that well, I don't know. But it just the evolution of instruments as they relate to the human voice, it's so it's so it's early and I haven't had enough coffee, so I'm not coming up with the right words. But the histories are so intertwined
Right.
that it's just a natural combination for voice and the instrument, and they can play off of each other so well because they're so similar.
Yeah, no, that's really well said. And most of my heroes also are singers too. You mentioned
hmm
Robert Johnson and his stepdad, or stepson. Forgive me, stepson Robert Lockwood Jr. is like
hmm
that whole lineage. And then of course you mentioned some of my favorite. I think you mentioned either John Lee Hooker or Muddy Waters, and
hmm
like, all of them are such incredible singers. And I feel that playing is just an extension of their voice, and also singing along as they play. They sing along. And I guess that, especially you mentioned students too. That's one thing I advocate is ear training and singing, and we don't
hmm
experience enough of it on the internet. especially you and I, we're full-time musicians here in New York City. We have had to change our life this last year and do a lot of things from home.
Hmm.
I'm even more passionate about trying to break a little bit of this dichotomy, because you Google, like, even one thing I did before our interview. This is my first interview, by the way, and I picked one of my very good closest friends, and also we know each other a long time.
Hmm.
I am always amazed, like, what comes up when you do a Google search. And I think what's missing, just from the idea of like blues interview or talking about someone who does it full time, and also both of us are full time musicians, so we have a special dialogue rather than one person being a musician. So the fact that we're both musicians can relate to this. Just the idea, the dichotomy of the guitar is so visually based, and this tablature and rote memory and tactile, and I advocate for the complete opposite, which is singing, the strengthening the voice, ear, instrument connection, and hearing intervals and distances. And that's why one of the reasons why I started with the slide is like hearing that minor third, knowing what it is, whether one knows what it's called or not. It's more important just to hear it. So as a vocalist, you just naturally do that, especially when you sing the blues, or if you evoke a blues flavoring to another genre. I mean, you and I have done jazz gigs together. We've done probably some reggae tunes in a band, a couple bands,
Yeah.
play as side people. But anyway, my point is, what is your feeling on that, just breaking that dichotomy? Or have you been aware of that, where sometimes guitar players, maybe when they're learning, get too off the track and say, oh, I'm on fret 7, and too in their head and visual,
Yeah.
tactile. How do you,
Well, with blues, it can go one way or the other. Well, actually, three ways. You've got the guys who think, and girls, who think that blues is a simple music form. In some regards, it is, but they play it because they think it's easy.
right,
And I don't like that kind of an attitude. They don't, it's not because they care about the music, it's because they think it's easy to do. And that kind of playing is not that enjoyable to me, because you can tell they're just throwing stuff out there. Then you've got the other end of the spectrum where they pick everything apart. And blues is about emotion, it's about feeling. The I don't think that the original blues players, the Delta guys, were thinking about all of that. They just said, well, this sounds great, and I've got this emotion that I want to put out there. And that's what I think it should be. And then you've got the guys and girls in the middle of the road who know their instrument backwards and forwards, but don't get too caught up in it. And that's the sweet spot.
right. It is that balance. That's really, really well said.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's really hearing and active listening. And I guess it's also you and I are both educators, and we've been asked this question so many different ways, or we notice it in a student. How do we get them on the path of hearing or organic listening? I know sometimes I'll have students where I'll say the similar thing, and maybe not as well said as you did, and they'll say yes, but what about the scale? And it's hard to say, bring them back to, like, all right, let's just hear that sound and get that. It really doesn't matter what scale, what note.
Hmm. Well, no, see, my students aren't instrumentalists or singers. We're teaching them the history of the blues. So we don't really get into that.
Right, right.
We go all the way back to the 1600s and the field hollers that the slaves were singing in the fields, and we bring it all the way up to present day, and how the blues developed into ragtime, and then into jazz, and then into uh, hello. I do this every day. I'm drawing a blank, but how it went on into R&B, and how it went into funk and hip hop and contemporary styles,
Yeah.
and the kids are eating it up.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're teaching African American history through music, and music through African American history.
Oh, that's so wonderful.
Hmm.
And actually, talk. Well, actually, while we're talking, I want to also introduce my other instrument.
Hmm.
Since you mentioned Robert Johnson, this is the guitar that you see him in that iconic photo. This is actually the 1930 Gibson L1. Although,
Nice.
maybe you can. Oh yeah, I love this guitar, and maybe you can shed some light on this too. There's no evidence that he recorded with this, but we see him in that iconic photo. And now that
Hmm.
second photo came out, I think by possibly is it his sister?
Is that the one where he's sitting at a table with some women?
Think so. It's like one of the only other ones. Obviously, he's not smoking a cigarette in that one.
Hmm.
And there's one. Is it maybe? Actually, maybe I'm forgetting this. Sorry, because there's also that he took that photo. I think it was like one of those self photos. You go into a little booth, and
No, I don't. Oh, there's the one in the white shirt. Because
maybe
he has one in the suit that you see like on the cover of his box set.
right.
And then there's one in a white shirt, and there's another one that's been circulating on social media. I'm not sure if it's real or not, but he's sitting at a table with a couple of women in what looks like it could be a diner or a cafe.
Oh wow, okay. Maybe I'm
Hmm.
thinking of the one. What was the one that's possibly from his sister? I think she possibly showed up at. I can't remember if it was a BB King gig, and said, "Hey, I want to talk to you," and had a little conversation about it. I read about it and also saw it about it in a recent
Yeah,
documentary.
I don't think I've seen that.
But anyway, so you have like you had mentioned with the blues, it brought you to a certain place, and obviously brings it to us to a certain error.
Hmm.
And that sound and that place that it brings us to, and then bringing that special feeling to all these different genres that obviously that you sing and that I play. That's well said. I was
Hmm.
just going to ask too. What is your feeling about just the idea of the church? Especially being African American and knowing that history and that deep, rich music that comes out of the church. And
Hmm.
artists that have had that experience, I mean, they just are bringing it to a new level. I mean, all the music of Aretha Franklin or Ray Charles that I grew up with.
Hmm. All of that came out of the gospel tradition.
Yeah.
Hmm. And I mean, I'm not a religious person. I used to be, and I've been to a lot of different churches. And a couple of the churches I went to were not into gospel music at all. You had to sing hymns, and you had to sing them straight. There was no improv. There was no hooting and hollering. There was none of that. You may as well have been in a Catholic
Right,
church.
right,
No offense to the Catholics out there.
right,
Your music is beautiful too, but this is not what you expect when you go to a Black church.
right.
Those were the Seventh Day Adventists. They're a little more conservative. And then the gospel churches, those were, you didn't need coffee to wake up on those days.
Yeah, the ones that I went to were incredible. I remember, I don't know if I ever told you this, but before I made my confirmation, I was seeking something, and my mom and I actually we would church shopping, so to speak, every Sunday.
Hmm.
Because I was growing up with the blues. Like that's what I knew since a kid. My dad. I mean, you know my dad. He's passed now, 12 years.
Hmm.
He toured with Sly and the Family Stone. He really saw a lot what was happening in the '60s. He knew Jimi Hendrix, and so I grew up just listening to Muddy Waters and Robert Johnson, and of course Robert Lockwood Jr. and so many great artists. Like one of my favorites. Now I need more coffee. I actually didn't have my second espresso today, but one of my
Oh,
favorite.
that's right. I forgot you're an addict.
I have my espresso maker in my car.
Hmm.
But the great guitar player, I'm forgetting his name right now, that sang the song Mary. He made one of the songs that I listened to growing up called Mary.
Hmm.
It'll come to me in a moment.
Hmm.
But also Reverend Gary Davis. So when I was going to church, it was very different. Although, like you said, I grew up Lutheran. Those churches that I went to had nice music, and I loved the chorales. But I was seeking another experience, and we did find a couple gospel churches in my neighborhood. I was so happy there. But in the end, I think maybe just it was expected of me to make my confirmation. I think the work that I would have needed and all the paperwork, or I guess all the attendance that I had, and I was also into playing music. I didn't want to, go to church all the time. I chose to go back to my original church, which was very nice, and I
Hmm.
finished my confirmation. But I do have not regrets, but I do still have this feeling like another goal in my life should go back. I should go back and revisit some of those churches, or even the other ones in New York City.
No, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, yeah. Some of my favorite musicians like will come from one of those gigs. Like, yeah, I was just doing a church gig down the road. Like right down. Like I just did. I just played Summer Stage, the virtual version with Russell Hall's trio version of his band. So it was just Russell and then C. Anthony Bryant.
Hmm.
And he's a reverend also, so I want to go to his church. And after doing that, I've done 2 gigs with him. One of his own projects too, with Alfonso Horn, a video shoot. So hearing, he's a great singer, and he's now, musicians are now, maybe I'm new to the game, but more recently seem to be knowing him, his singing side. He's an incredible singer, but also incredible preacher too. I'll
Hmm.
some links with you, but yeah, it's such a great tie-in with the church and with gospel music. And what are some other artists that our listeners should check out? We should mention O.M. Terrell. There's been a lot of great female guitar players, and sister Rosetta Tharpe.
Of course. Hmm. I'm really into Brittany Howard these days. Valerie June is amazing. Amethyst Kia, or Kaya, I don't know how she pronounces her last name. Valerie Turner, I think her name is. I'm
Yeah,
actually friended with her on Facebook, but she's an amazing player. Um, who is the other one? Oh, she's on everything. Really pretty girl, but she's an amazing singer, amazing player, and she's really keeping the tradition. I'll figure out her name.
yeah, sure.
Yeah. She's always on CBS Sunday morning.
Oh, cool.
I'm trying to remember because she looks just like my girlfriend. But yeah, and I think about like how many players we've lost in
Right.
the last couple of years,
Yeah.
and it's just horrible. I
Yeah.
mean, of course, we lost Gregg, and Henry Butler's gone.
Yeah.
The Neville brothers are dying off.
Yeah.
I mean, how many? I'm like 2 or 3 of them left now.
I was really
And
blessed because I think it was the Bonnie Raitt concert I went to
hmm.
a year ago or so, more now over a year. I think one of the Neville brothers came out. I saw like a bunch of concerts with my family. We usually don't go to concerts because I'm always doing gigs, but I made a special goal to go to more shows, bring our kids. And yeah, one of the Neville brothers sat in on piano. It was incredible. So
Hmm.
his name wasn't even on the bill.
Yeah, that's insanely awesome. And I mean, I look at the different kinds of bands that I've worked with that are not traditionally blues bands. Like, um, I worked with members of the Grateful Dead, and there's so much blues in that. And if you go to a Phil Lesh show, he would have shows called Phil and Friends. There is so much improvisation in that show. It sounds like jazz. And that's why those shows have attracted so many jazz players. Christian McBride played, Stanley Jordan.
Wow.
Who else? A whole bunch of jazz players because Phil Lesh was originally a jazz trumpet player. I recently found out. I never knew that. Um, and Henry would play the New Orleans type of jazz, and it was like really heavily blues infused. It's just everywhere, and people don't know to recognize it. That's one of the other things that we're working on with our students is how to recognize the blues and how to understand how so many other music forms came out of it.
Right, right. That's a really
Mhm.
good point. What tools do you give them, or do you mention?
We have a series of videos that we've made, and I can't talk anymore about that. We let them listen to blues music. We let them listen to the music forms that evolved out of blues. And we teach them the history, not only of the music, but of the African Americans that created it. So
That's
it's not really about playing the music. It's about just understanding the history. And it's also teaching them empathy, um, because the history that they've had leaves all of this stuff out mostly. I mean, sure, they know that there were slaves and they know that they weren't well treated, but what happened to them after that?
right, right,
After they were free, there's not a lot out there.
right.
Like, one of our instructors is a history teacher from Tulsa, Oklahoma. She didn't know about the race riots until like last year.
Wow, wow.
Hmm. And that's part of our curriculum. I mean, we do try to make it a little easier on the younger kids, um, but it's what we do is we're always open to answering their questions as best we can. They're in a safe space. They're either at home on their computers or on Zoom with us through in their classrooms, and they can ask anything. I tell them there are no wrong answers to anything. If this is what you're feeling, then that's what you're supposed to be feeling, unless of course, well, I mean, it hasn't happened, but um, sometime I'm worried that there are going to be some bad ideas coming from home,
Oh, right, right,
because a lot of parents have their own ideas about the source material,
right, right.
and that's always a concern.
Yeah.
Like we did, I've been trying to get the program into libraries, and of course, if you're trying to work something into a library, then you contact the people you know. And I know a lot of people on a lot of librarians on Long Island because we've performed there,
Mm.
and they're interested. But I'm worried about that because there are some issues with bias out there.
Oh, right, right.
Yeah.
I'm happy to recommend people that I know. I know the staff at the Duke Ellington School because I've done
Hmm.
artist residency
Oh,
there.
that would be amazing. We've had people from the NAACP take a look at the program, and actually, I just heard Whoopi Goldberg on The View today saying that this is needed in the schools. We need to teach the history. We need to develop the empathy because there isn't any.
Yeah.
Well, there isn't much. There's some, but there isn't as much as there should be. Then and just get people to understand that when you're looking at the world, you're not looking at a mirror. You're looking out a window,
Right, right,
and you're seeing everything that's out there, not just your own world.
right.
And there's just not enough of that. And I'm not gonna. I mean, it's not a recent thing. It was always out there, and
Yeah,
it was just festering, and it was just given permission to blossom in the last 4 years.
yeah. Now, Whoopi Goldberg has just been such a great positive force in our community,
Hmm.
and funny and incredibly gifted, talented, producer, comedian, and
Yeah, she's producing quite a few um, uh, projects that are covering not only African American history but African music. There's a basketball player who is producing a piece about the race riots in Tulsa. I just saw a casting for that for talent.
oh wow,
Hmm.
that's super cool.
Yeah. But I mean, it all comes from the same place, and we teach the kids that it's impossible to tell the African American story without telling the story of the music. That they're so intertwined, you just can't separate them.
Right, right.
Hmm.
And one thing you said earlier about what happened after the Africans were freed in this country. There's all
Hmm.
these stories that I've heard. Playing in Dr. David Pleasant's band is not only the slaves but the freed Africans. Their instruments were taken away as well. It's a part of the Gullah Geechee culture of playing on your body and all the great rhythms that come out of that. The Sapelo Islands, Sapelo Island and Gullah Geechee Islands
Hmm.
were not just slaves but also freed Africans that were still not really free. So it's
Yeah.
always
Well, I mean, especially right after emancipation in Galveston, I mean, they didn't even know they were free until 2 years afterwards. But after they were freed, you had the ones who stayed in the South and went into sharecropping, which literally was just another form of slavery. And they did that for years.
yeah,
And then there was all the segregation, which is yet another form of slavery. And then the voter suppression, you couldn't vote unless you could read.
right, right,
Like, and it's all happening all over again. Some people just don't learn,
yeah.
but that's what we're working on.
Did you see the movie Boycott about Martin Luther?
No, I haven't seen that yet.
Oh, yeah, it's really good. During Black History Month, we made sure we had open conversations with our kids, and then we watched two movies that like within a couple days apart.
It's on HBO, isn't it?
Can't remember. I have to look it up now.
I think it's on one of the channels I don't have, so that's probably why I haven't seen it.
I know we don't have HBO, so maybe it was Netflix or Amazon.
Because I definitely have both of those, and I've heard about the movie. I don't think it was on either, but I'll look again because they migrate.
Yeah, we saw two that week, like a day apart, and I'm forgetting the other one, but they're both really good.
Hmm.
And I was going to introduce one other guitar because also, be careful with this baby. We also talked about blues migrating and playing it in all different genres. So this evokes a different feeling too. The idea of you have blues, and if we want to classify it as rock or whatever you want to call it.
Well, that instrument right there is the reason that blues went into that rock and roll came out of the blues.
Taking
I know my shit.
taking over for the saxophone. I did a couple gigs, a bunch of gigs actually with Danny. He has a band that he talks about the guitar taking over. Danny Lipsitz.
Yeah.
A great reeds player, but also he has the whole history thing where he does a concert. We played at Joe's Pub, where the guitar starts taking over the role of the saxophone.
Mm-hmm.
It's great. We do everything from we start with trad jazz. I have my banjo. We morph into semi-hollow guitar and then electric, solid body guitar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's probably a very similar thing. But do you have any thoughts or any other ideas to share in terms of like the affect, effect that evokes?
Well, I mean, I don't really have opinions on effects except that they shouldn't be overused.
Yeah.
And so many guitar players overuse them. If I see a guitar player getting on my stage and his pedal board is like huge, I'm like, I'm never working with this guy again. I mean, I guess maybe it's because I came out of a jazz tradition where when there weren't a lot of electric instruments being played, that I like that natural acoustic sound. I don't mind an electric guitar. I've worked with tons of electric guitar players, but they all knew their instruments and they could all play it really well. And
Right.
they understood the importance, the equal importance of sound and silence.
Oh, right, right.
Mhm.
Yeah, using space is everything. It just affects phrasing. It's in terms of improvisation. It's just so it's the most powerful. I mean, I guess a lot of my heroes use so much space. They leave
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
much.
And I feel the same way about singers. I mean, I know tons of singers, and we all know tons of singers who just get up there and do vocal acrobatics and yada 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 yada. I hate that,
Right, right,
and it's annoying.
right,
And it's the same with guitar players who do that. They play for the sake of playing.
right, right,
Hmm.
right. It's really it's true. It's a kind of a generalization, but it is so much. There's so much of it that it is good to be aware of. Especially
Hmm.
I think because fretted string instrument players and string instrument players don't need to physically breathe. Don't quote unquote need. Of course, we need to breathe
Yeah.
in music, but they could just keep playing a note, and especially with effects, then you keep sustaining a note. It's like
Hmm.
amp goes to 11, and
Well, then you get into things like circular breathing.
right, that's true. There's always ways around it.
Courtney Pine.
I'm not familiar with her. Is that
No, Courtney Pine is a sax player.
Oh, sax player. Okay.
He circular breathes.
Oh, okay, okay.
I've seen it. It's the strangest thing you've ever seen.
Wow. I've seen it before, but it is incredible. I think that's one reason why I think I gravitated towards string instruments because I think just
Mhm.
having to breathe. I mean, even though if I'm not circular breathing, just the fact of breathing is going to affect my sound. It's like, all right, I'll sing, but if I have to, also blow through, use a reed, it's
Yeah,
challenging.
not to mention one chapped lip and you're done for the week.
Teeth. I know I've talked to Clark Terry about his teeth and having like things to be concerned about like maintenance. I mean, I
Hmm.
barely have enough time to make sure that I have my strings and but that's a whole nother whole nother topic.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, even with severe arthritis, Les Paul was still able to play.
Right, right.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. Just him,
Hmm.
he had his arm, set fixed a certain way.
Yeah. You took me to see him for the
Ah,
first time.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. I wish somebody had gotten video of that.
I wonder if because I went. Did we know each other way back in the back in the day? Because I met him when I was really really young, and I got his autograph, and then later I played with him, just kind of unofficially.
I think we met in 91 after I came back from Boston.
Oh wow,
91? 2000, was it 2001? It was 2001.
that's when you came back from Boston.
Yeah.
Cool. So we, holy cow, we always know each other.
Jam session at Birdland.
20 years, right? Jam session in Birdland. Was it the? Oh yeah, it was this. Yeah, right. I'm thinking of
It's 2000 or 2001. Yeah, one of those.
Birdland that's there now.
Hmm.
It was the.
It was the IAJE.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, Ted Firth was playing. I think Danny Glass was playing.
Was that the same year that I did it with Miles Griffith?
He wasn't with us if you did, because I know you were doing a lot of activities in IAJE, and I was only there for that one thing.
Oh, so that probably was with Miles Griffith's band, New Ting, and then
No, well, if you were, you were on before, because I don't. All I remember is Ted and Danny playing. I don't remember and you actually playing the gig. So it might have been another day.
yeah, I know.
Hmm.
I think that may have been the only time I went. So it probably was with Miles.
Hmm.
You know, we had the free pass. We had because we were playing.
Yeah, because I know I didn't meet Miles until much later.
Oh right, right.
Hmm.
We just had the one showcase that we played, and then I spent the time I bumped into you, and then I remember we walked over. I think we walked right because it was so close. We walked over to Birdland, and then do
Hmm.
you mind if saying we sat in at the jam session, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Wow, this is and that were you living in Queens at that time?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Hmm.
And we
Right
also
where I am now.
we have our mutual friend Ted Baker too.
Hmm.
I wonder
Yeah.
if he mentioned you before you moved to New York because I think Ted was still in New York at that time, right?
Yes, he was. Hmm.
Oh, cool. Well, this has been great. Wow, you said some really great things that yeah, I'm really excited to share with people. Is there anything else you want to say? Anything you want to say in terms of yeah, anything at all or
Wash your hands. Wear a mask. We want to gig again. That was a pandemic comment, so you can cut that out.
it's fine. Decide if I mean maybe it doesn't matter. It's good to have this like uh, snapshot of our lives, right?
Yeah, just listen to some music
Yeah,
and don't pick it apart. Just enjoy it.
yeah. And sing with it, right? Sing along with it, and
Yeah, yeah. They say that people who listen to and people who play music maintain better brain function when they get older. So listen to some music. It'll keep you from getting Alzheimer's.
wait, what were you talking about?
That's funny.
You get a little bit of a lunch break now, or you have to start teaching again?
I'm all set up for my class. It doesn't start until 1:20, so I'll probably have something. I haven't eaten today.
Oh, let me let you go. Go enjoy your short break. Thank you, Anastasia René. Is it Anastasia
Thanks, Nick.
René?
Hmm.
AnastasiaRené.com?
No, I don't have a website.
You still, yeah. Well, I mean, when I post it, just send me
Yeah, I mean, I'm on SoundCloud. I'm on Reverbnation, Facebook.
MySpace.
Probably. I haven't looked at it in a really long time. All right. I'll see you soon.
My best to your mom. Okay.
Yours and to your family too.
So much. Okay, bye.
Take care.